On the show today, viewers will be confronting a shocking reality that is crippling our nation's health. A staggering 155 million adults and 45 million adolescents in India are failing to meet the World Health Organization's basic physical activity guidelines. This is according to the latest survey by Dalbar. In fact, this survey also reveals that only 10% of Indian adults engage in sports, and the number of those who participate regularly is even lower. While 66% of adolescents are involved in sports, half of those only play cricket. In fact, the gender disparity is even more alarming. In urban areas, one-third of girls who are playing or indulging in activities are not even meeting WHO guidelines. In fact, this is now putting them at the highest risk of obesity. This is not just a statistic, it's a ticking time bomb. Let me tell you why. As per this survey, if we don't act now, by 2047, we could see an additional 200 million adult cases of non-communicable diseases, 45 million more obese adolescents, and also a staggering increase in health costs. Joining me right now on the show to discuss more on this is the brain behind the survey, Gaurav Gupta, who's a global managing partner for Dalberg Advisors, Deepak, who's a fitness trainer, and also Dr. Ajay Pratap Singh, who's a cardiologist at SCPM Hospital. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast. Gaurav, let's start with you now. Give us the top findings of this survey, because the data that we have right now, it's alarming. We need to act, and we need to act right now.
Well, thanks for shining a light on this. You've covered a lot of the highlights. I'll add one more, which is if you look at urbanized Indians, they're 1.5, 2 times worse in the level of inactivity. And as we all know, we're urbanizing even more. So it was absolutely correct to call this a ticking time bomb. WHO says we need about 150 hours of moderate exercise, 150 minutes of moderate exercise each week. That is not a huge standard. That's just the minimum standard to be active. And we have close to 200 million people in the country that are not even achieving that. I think you talked about gender. That's a really critical aspect of this. Women are actually getting 20% less exercise. And if you can actually break that down, one of those core moments is as girls hit puberty, it is sometimes cultural norms. It is the way we think about girls growing up that we're actually pulling them away from play. And that then continues. Married women have 20 to 30% less exercise than unmarried women. So there are these factors which are actually preventing girls and women from going out and engaging in sport. I think, as you mentioned, even when we talk about active, and we're calling active, only 10% of them are actually playing a sport. So one of the things that we really need to highlight is not just the amount of activity, but the quality of activity as well, where a lot of it is chores. We're doing chores where it's because our work requires us to be physically moving things around. It's not because we're out there playing and engaging in community sports, in teams, and getting all the other quality benefits that sport really provides and physical activity provides.
Absolutely. In fact, we also have an expert, Dr. Ajay Pratap Singh, who's a cardiologist. Dr. Ajay, before we go to work there and understand the fitness secrets, fitness formulas about what to do, I'll come to you first. Help us understand what do you make of this report now, because this is a very alarming statistic. The fact that you have such inactivity levels across the nation, and this is not just the adult population that we're talking about. These are young adults, these are youngsters as well. These are adolescents that now are inactive, and a lot of this can be attributed to multiple factors, but at the end of the day, it is now leading India towards a very unhealthy future.
Absolutely correctly pointed by this report. The physical inactivity level has increased. However, in our medical term, we find it as less than 20 minutes of exercise, at least per week, for a day in a week. Or being active, we call active being with an exercise time of more than 150 minutes, as told by Gaurav also. So we have to understand that activity level leads to obesity, and obesity is the heart of all the diseases we can think of. It leads to early hypertension. Now we are seeing epidemic of very young maturity onset diabetes in patients, and increased incidence of heart disease, especially heart attacks, sudden cardiac death, and heart ventricular arrhythmias, and all these problems. We have to consider this thing that being active is most important, and for activity doesn't require that we have to go to a gym or we have to join somewhere. We have to be very rigorous. Activity as defined by WHO is if you do at least 30 minutes of exercise 5 times in a row in a week, more enough for you. And these activities should be aerobic.
Correct.
That includes walking at a speed of 5 to 6 miles per hour, or swimming, or a good Zumba class of 20 minutes. I think our gym buddy will be helping us out in this. What is the best activity? However, I'll suggest that the activity less leads to weight loss, less obesity, and less incidence of hypertension and diabetes in young patients, which we are seeing, decreasing the morbidity and mortality with respect to cardiovascular disease, especially heart attack in young patients.
Absolutely. Before we get into the details of the technicalities and also about the things that people need to do as well, let me go across to Deepak now, who's of course a popular fitness trainer in Delhi NCR. Deepak, a lot of people tell you that they don't have the time to come to the gym. बहुत लोग आपको बोलते हैं कि जिम आने का टाइम नहीं है, बहुत ज़्यादा काम है और वर्कआउट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, और आप बहुत उनको एक बेसिक टिप्स देते हैं कि भाई आप इतने एक्सरसाइज कर लीजिए सुबह सुबह, इतने काफ़ी होते हैं. कुछ अगर एक्सरसाइजेस आप हमारे व्यूअर्स को देना चाहिए, बेसिक एक्सरसाइजेस जिसको करके वो एटलीस्ट अगर जिम नहीं जा पाए, कम से कम घर पे अपना फिटनेस रेजिम जो है वो कंटिन्यू कर पाए.
चलो मैं आपको दिखाता हूँ. ये रोज के ये नए बहाने होते हैं ऐसे फिटनेस के लिए, कि बहुत ही ईजी है आजकल. ठीक है, चलो तो मैं आपको दिखाता हूँ. ठीक है, सबको अपने अपने हिसाब से करना चाहिए, कैपेसिटी के हिसाब से. नॉर्मली जिम में कोई भी एक्टिविटी कर सकते हैं. बाहर वॉक भी कर सकते हो आप जाके, और जिम भी कर सकते हो, स्विमिंग भी कर सकते हो, जॉगिंग भी कर सकते हो. कोई भी क्रिकेट, बैडमिंटन, बास्केटबॉल, वॉलीबॉल, कोई भी एक्टिविटी कर सकते हो. तो ये हेल्थ के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है और आपके हार्ट के लिए. ठीक है, चलो मैं आपको दूसरा वर्कआउट दिखाता हूँ. इस वर्कआउट का नाम है हाइपरटेंशन लोअर बैक के लिए. आजकल सबकी पीठें होती रहती है. आइए
तो काफी इंपॉर्टेंट एक्सरसाइजेस है. एक सेकंड दीपक, आप जो बता रहे हैं काफी इंपॉर्टेंट एक्सरसाइजेस है, लेकिन विदाउट इक्विपमेंट्स अगर आप 2-3 एक्सरसाइज लगा पाए हमको जिसमें इक्विपमेंट्स की जरूरत ना हो और घर पे लोग कर पाए आराम से.
अच्छा, बर्पीज कर सकते हो आप, स्क्वाट्स कर सकते हो आप, जैक, हाई नी जंपिंग, साइड रेस. ये नॉर्मल एक्टिविटी है. क्रॉस हाई नी, ये तो नॉर्मल है. आप अपने घर पे भी कर सकते हो. जिसका कोई बहाना नहीं है, आप घर पे कर सकते हो, गार्डन पे कर सकते हो.
जी दीपक, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद एक्सरसाइजेस दिखाने के लिए. सो दिस वाज अ फिटनेस ट्रेनर हियर. Deepak was telling us that it's not important for you to go to the gym every day. It's not important for you to have fancy equipments. Even without those, you can actually continue your fitness regimen at home as well and continue to stay fit. Gaurav, coming back to you now, we're talking about fitness, we're talking about activity, but also one of the reasons why I've read multiple such reports, they talk about the fitness, the lack of fitness in India, and a lot of that is attributed to nutrition as well. The fact that we have very less protein in most of our diet, that also contributes majorly as to why we are not really fit. Give us more understanding about the lack of fitness in India, which has to be attributed to nutrition.
Yeah, look, I think fitness and physical activity is only one part of many things. And, we have a cardiologist here who can speak more about it. But I want to make one point first. We need a lot more Deepaks, right? I think that was really great. He showed those exercises. But, most of the people who are active, 60% of them don't do any strength training, right? So even when we talk about an active population, there's no
Right.
strength training going on. And that's actually, even the type of activity matters. As you get older, you have to do strength training, otherwise you get frail. And this country is getting older. So really critical to have more Deepaks as well. And at the same time, nutrition is part of the overall picture. It's different in terms of physical activity versus what nutrition is doing for us. And I just want to make sure that we're not saying that physical activity is going to solve all of these things. It is critical, especially in those first 1,000 days of a child, to make sure that they're getting the kind of protein and calorie count that they need. But our report really focused on the fitness side of this because there's effectively a free lunch here. Because if we can change attitudes, if parents can see that a kid spending time in the playground, it's benefiting just as much as a kid in a classroom, we can actually start to get all of these benefits that come that are both about healthcare, also about actually mental health, and they ultimately make us more productive. You've got this great ability to actually earn more because you're more productive if you've been physically fit, while at the same time you're costing less because you're also not going to the doctor as much. So there's an enormous opportunity here alongside nutrition. But I think our cardiologists can talk even more about the importance of matching nutrition.
Absolutely.
Right, physical
Right.
exercise.
Let's go across to Dr. Ajay, who's of course the expert, the in-house expert here. Dr. Ajay, we are talking about, I just look at a stat which said that around 50% of Indians go through a heart attack before the age of 55. Now I don't know if it's true. You can correct me if I'm wrong. This is an alarming statistic that, of course, a lot of studies are also showing, and a lot of these heart attacks and other such ailments are all associated to sedentary lifestyle. Again, all of it comes down to the lack of activity.
Say, very well pointed. However, if you look back to the data which was present to us by pre-COVID area, the data we have said was absolutely correct that the incidence of heart attack are more in India when compared to Western population. It is by 10 years earlier. However, post-COVID, due to fear of things and due to lack of social norms and all these things, we have now significantly seen myocardial infarction and a heart attack in very young population that can include age of 45. The barrier of the age has been decreased to 45, and we are defining it as a new entity of myocardial infarction in young patients. And the first and the foremost point which I will like to point about the increase in incidence of this is due to inactivity. Because due to inactivity, there is more of insulin resistance in our body due to obesity, and then obesity leads to hypertension due to weight gain, and then all these things amalgamate into myocardial infarction at very young age. Recent onset diabetes, early onset hypertension, palpitations. And with the advent of COVID, we can understand this thing now. The healthcare is readily available at home. Everybody knows their blood pressure. Everybody knows their heart rate. And with this, the incidence of these diseases have increased much more. So we have to be very cautious about understanding this thing, that activity in form of moderate intensity. I again emphasize, it doesn't mean that you have to wake up and run to the gym. You have to run on treadmill. It means moderate intensity exercise that includes movement more than 50% of your large muscles to a functional capacity of only 50%. It doesn't require that you go and lift 100 kgs of weight. It is more than enough if you do skipping 100 times, you do Zumba, you like dancing, you jog, you run at 5 to 6 miles per hour. These all things are going to increase your cholesterol levels, your blood pressure level. They are going to increase your endorphins, mental states, and decrease stress also. All these features along better nutrition, as already pointing by Gaurav that we are already lagging in nutrition also, because we Indians, we have a staple diet of carbohydrate more rather than protein. However, the requirement of protein in our diet is at least 0.9 grams per kg weight. That means at least 50 grams per 60 kg of meal. So all these things should be answered in multiple aspects togetherly. Then only we can decrease the incidence of whatever we are seeing and the trend which is moving towards young age. And especially to all the young people, because most of the people usually comes to me and they ask that I want to go to gym, I want to exercise, but I'm fearful of the news that we are seeing. We are seeing sudden cardiac deaths, Zumba, we are seeing sudden cardiac deaths on treadmill. So you have to remember that your heart always gives you a sign. You have to look for 4 vital signs. Number one, that your resting heart rate is not more than 80 or 90 beats per minute. Your resting blood pressure is within normal limits of less than 130, at least less than 130, and the desired ranges of 110 millimeter Hg of systolic. Your family history should not be active for any kind of cardiovascular disease or mortality before 45 years of age. However, as per guidelines, it is to be defined at 55. we Indians, as we know, with respect to Western population, we are affected 10 years prior to them. So we have to follow what we see in our
Okay.
Indian diet, and along with that, a proper diet and exercise schedule, less of stress, more of yoga, where it is going to help us out, help our youth out, and decrease the burden of the.
Absolutely. And let me go back to Deepak now, who's of course right there at the gym giving us tips about what we should do, what we shouldn't do as far as exercises are concerned. Deepak, ये कहा जाता है कि फिटनेस 80% डाइट है, 20% वर्कआउट है. तो न्यूट्रिशन के अगर कुछ आप टिप्स बताना चाहे व्यूअर्स को कि खाने में क्या मतलब क्या प्रिफर कर सकते हैं, कैसे अपने आप को फिट रख सकते हैं, अगर वर्कआउट नहीं कर पा रहे तो ओनली थ्रू डाइट अपने आप को कैसे फिट रख सकते हैं.
आपकी बॉडी में डाइट ही इम्पोर्टेंट है और जितना हो सके बाहर के खाने को अवॉइड करो, घर का खाना लो और जितना हो सके आजकल लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, सब डिनर लेट करते हैं, रात में 11-12 फिर सो जाते हैं. मोस्टली पहले के लोग क्या करते थे, पहले फिट रहते थे, वो क्या करते थे कि अपना जो लास्ट डिनर है ना, उन लोग का नॉर्मली 6 and 7 कंप्लीट हो जाता था. और नॉर्मली डिनर करने के बाद आपको वो बहुत ज़रूरी है. न्यूट्रिशन में आपका प्रोटीन इंटेक थोड़ा सा हाई होना चाहिए. फाइबर और कार्ब दोनों इम्पोर्टेंट है. गुड कार्ब और बैड कार्ब में फ़र्क देखिए, समझिए. कोलेस्ट्रॉल वगैरह बहुत हाई होता है, जिससे आपको हार्ट का बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है. ठीक है.
जी दीपक, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सारी जानकारी के लिए. सो दैट वाज Deepak getting us information about the nutrition as well. Like he rightly pointed out, the fact that we are now used to having late dinners, we work out very less, we are very less active as far as our physical fitness is also concerned. That's also a major cause of concern as well. In fact, let me go back to Gaurav here. Gaurav, this is again your report that we're talking about, all the data that's come out from this report as well. Also, if you can just give us an understanding of what's the way forward, because the government has brought out schemes like Fit India. There are a lot of course, activities at schools and colleges as well that are organized. But at the end of the day, there seems to be a stigma with exercise or fitness. Like, for example, even our doctor here pointed out that a lot of people think that working out too much will lead to heart attacks or it's going to lead to health issues as such. So how do we come out of this stigma? What's the way forward?
Yeah, I think firstly, it is great what the government is doing because a big part of it is behavior shift. And I think the messaging that has been coming out from the Prime Minister and the government at large is one incredibly critical component because there are all these myths. There are myths about gender, myths about the importance of this for kids and their development, because of the belief that you actually need to focus on studies much more. And there's a lot of evidence to say if you actually don't get enough exercise, your actual studies themselves suffer. So in fact, the opposite is true. So myth busting is definitely part of it. But it's also the case that, in our survey, 60 to 70% of school-going children said that the schools were missing equipment, like simple equipment, like bat and ball, to play, right? So there is a need to think about the physicality of this to create the kind of spaces and the equipment that
Alarming finding, Gaurav. That's a very alarming finding. The fact that 60 to 70% of the school children are saying that their schools have no equipment, not even a bat or a ball. I mean, we talk about I think that's that's again one of the findings that hints at why we don't have Olympic medals now. We just have 6 Olympic medals, and everyone suddenly goes like, "What's happened? Why are we not winning medals at the Olympics?" I think this is the answer to that.
Yeah, well, and also, 50% when you ask them about what sport you play, 50% say cricket. So there's also a diversity issue. I mean, it's not that cricket is bad, but every sport engages you differently, engages different parts of your body and muscles. We don't have diversity. 50% are just saying cricket. So it's about equipment, it's about diversity, but then ultimately it's about trying to create spaces. So if I think about the policy layer, it's how can the whole of government approach that thinks about how schools are being used, how our parks are being used, such that all of these different pieces of infrastructure create the access to the ability to actually exercise. That includes equipment, but that includes having access to open spaces. And that's only going to get worse when more and more of us are urbanizing, where spaces are much more limited.
All right. Also, before we wrap this discussion up, we just have a few minutes on the broadcast. Dr. Ajay, some tips here for the viewers who are watching right now, because like you rightly pointed out, and also Gaurav now just mentioned that myth busting is a very important part of the entire process now to engage people to be more conscious as far as their fitness is concerned, because like you rightly pointed out, a lot of people now seem to have a notion as to how there are heart attacks, people who go to the gyms, people who go to Zumba classes, they seem to be susceptible as well. That's one of the myths that's floating around the internet. So if you can give us more information about that, and also some tips for the viewers to ensure that even with limited resources, they can still stay fit as far as their fitness regime is concerned and also nutrition is concerned.
Very rightly pointed. See, we are running towards urbanization in our country. However, if we see the significance of exercise and sports activity has significantly increased in urban area. However, when we see into the rural area, still we are fighting with social stigma of female bias. Everybody runs behind on a single sport. Everybody is dreaming. Everybody is running behind some goal. There is a lot of stress and there's no de-stressing present at present this moment. These all things are connected to hormonal levels of our body. Along with that, we add on it with a physical inactivity and sedentary lifestyle. Both the things are totally different. We have to understand sedentary behavior is of sitting more than or sitting, reclining, or lying down with less of activity. And if you do it more than 11 hours, you are susceptible to more of heart diseases. Similarly, if you are exercising this, you are susceptible to more of heart disease. For this, what I suggest is for our corporate friends, for our friends which are into long sedentary lifestyles, long sedentary work in front of computers and all, we have to walk a more. Whatever you are doing, it is not important, more important than your health. You take small breaks, small frequent breaks is required. It doesn't require that you go and 100 push-ups. It is just like you go move your feet around, move around your office, talk to your friend at a department. These all are going to help you out. It is not going to help you out in decreasing weight. It is going to help you get you out from your sedentary behavior. Or for physical activity, it is very straightforward. We should have a nationalized program. We should inculcate these things in our study regime, in our study regime, so that these are inculcated in our self at a very early age, so that they get, as Gaurav pointed out, that everybody is running behind cricket in our country because of the glamour, and then we talk of Olympic medals. You have to understand that if we give weight to every physical sport in our country, we are going to do wonders in every place, because we are a powerhouse of potential, powerhouse with maximum number of population.
So the bottom line, Dr. Rajay, the bottom line here is the fact that there are multiple diseases, there are multiple causes, but there's one simple solution. Don't make excuses. Get out of your couch, get out of your chair, go out there, engage yourself, carry out some fitness activity, and also make sure that it's a routine and it's not just a thing. Appreciate you joining us on the broadcast, Dr. Ajay, Deepak, and also Gaurav. We'll be discussing this and a lot more in the future as well, because of course this is an issue that doesn't look like it's going to end